This morning I want to turn your attention to a very familiar verse of Scripture in 2 Kings chapter 4. And we're going to start reading about verse 17. We're going to be cognizant of the clock today. I would hope that this morning that if you have a mom that's still alive, that you are going to at least give her a call and say, I love you, thinking about you, whatever the case may be. And please do that. But I want to read to you about a mom here in the Old Testament that we have really had a lot of sermons preached about this lady. And not necessarily because she was a mom, but because she was an absolute wonderful example of how we should be. But starting at verse 17 in 2 Kings chapter 4, it says this: the woman conceived and bare a son at that season that Elisha had said unto her according to the time of life. And when the child was grown, it fell on a day that he went out to his father to the reapers, or out to the fields. And he said to his father, my head, my head. And he said to a lad, carry him to his mother. And when he had taken him and brought him to his mother, he sat on her knees till noon, and then died. What's a terrible, sad story. That's one of those stories, I don't know about you, but when I read it, without reading before or after, and I read just the content of that story, that is a sad story. That's not a story moms would like to, I'm sure, would like to be a part of, but we find, however, that this lady, this woman, the Shunammite woman, has found herself in a position where her child has died. It was the year 1820, and Peter Ridgely was a grateful man. He had survived one of the strongest and most harrowing events known to mankind. The ship which he had been sailing on sank. He was rescued. And by some strange twist of circumstance, this ship sank as well. What's a lucky dude? He was rescued again. But this third ship sank likewise. And he was rescued again for a third time. Yet, yep, you guessed it, his fourth ship soon sank. And unbelievably, he was rescued for a fourth time. But the fifth ship sank as well. It would have been laughable if it hadn't been so serious. On the high seas, however, he floated with the serene confidence that somehow God must not want him to die. Sure enough, as if on cue, another ship comes by and answers his call for his plea for help. This ocean liner, the city of Leeds, was named after its British city of origin. It was bound from England to Australia and traveled the same sea lane as Peter Ridgely's downed ships. The crew of the city of Leeds hoisted Peter aboard, dried him off, put new clothes on him. Ship's doctor gave him a routine exam, found everything was perfectly fine. He was fit. And then the doctor asked him a very unusual favor. There's a lady on board who booked passage to Australia, the doctor explained. She's looking for her son who disappeared years ago. She's dying and she's asking now to see her son. And she knows everybody on board, and since you're the only one here that's a newcomer, would you pretend for just a moment to be her son? Well, Peter agreed. After all, his life had now been saved for the fifth time. He followed the doctor below deck and entered into a cabin. There was a small bed. On it lay a frail woman with silver hair. She was obviously suffering from a very high fever and delirious. She was crying out, please God, let me see my son before I die. I must see my son. The ship's doctor gently pushed the young man toward the bed. Soon, however, Peter Ridgely began sobbing. For lying there on that bed was the person or was the reason that he couldn't seem to die. Here was a lifeline that had kept him from drowning 5 times. For lying on that bed was none other than Sarah Ritchley, who had prayed for 10 years to be reconciled with her son Peter. The ship's doctor stood in amazement as the young man fell down by the bed and embraced the sick woman. "I'm here, Mom. It's me. I'm here." Within days, the fever had subsided, and his mother awakened to find an answered prayer seated on the side of her bed. This was a story that Louis Lamar had, in an interview, relegated from his many, many hours of talking to people and in researching. There are several references that bear out that this was a true story. That Peter Ritchley had found his mom after 10 years of searching. Never, never, never underestimate the power of a praying mom. There's something about moms that I guess strike at the heart of all of us, because everyone sitting here has one. And when it comes down to it, they say that bond is so strong, and that we've heard the story of Greg McCool sings a couple songs about moms praying and standing in the gap. I too can tell you that without a fact, I have had many times in my life that my mom and others have prayed and prayed protection and help in my own life. And I remember very fondly some of those old-time prayer meetings where we meet at home, back whenever you used to take church home with you, after you left Sunday school. You'd have prayer meetings during the week. People come over, and they wouldn't just come over and, grill hamburgers. They'd come over and grill hamburgers and then pray. And I remember some of those old ladies of Israel who just, just one of those things that, never leaves your mind, of those types of women in our lives who have done this. But we find here that there's a scripture in verse 8 that tells us and sets a tone for the Shunammite woman in our story. And it's one of those things that leads us an example or gives us some insight. It said it fell on the day that Elisha passed to Shunem, where there was a great woman. That's a pretty good word. Whenever you're described as great, that particular word denotes certain things in our mind, and it begs the question, what would have made the Shunammite woman so very great? I believe that when you take a look at this story, I think she was a busy woman. I believe she had a lot going. I believe that she stayed busy, and maybe it was that she discovered an ability to not let the surroundings that she was living in dictate to her what she did, or maybe she realized where her real source of gladness came from, and maybe she never let the little things in life bother her. Whatever it was, she was gifted with a kind heart. She was gifted with a heart that when she saw the prophet, it touched her in such a way and said, "Look, we know the story. We're going to build a room on the side of the house, and we're going to make a place for the prophet to stay." I believe that this woman had an absolute great sense of self-control and inner character and a calmness and a passion about her. But there's going to come a day when no matter how great she may have been, she was going to become tested. And we find here in the story that we read that this little child was the child that Elisha had promised her was coming her way, and it came to pass. And he was stopping by, and he was with this family a few times, and he would eat meals with them. And obviously, he was going to go back by, and he was in and out on a regular basis. And I believe that Elisha in his mind, because of the fact that they had built the room for him and had befriended him and was helping him, that obviously he was going to find ways to help out, and he was praying blessings in their life. They had a great relationship. And his request came, what can I do for this family? And he said, look, he said, tell you what I can do. I can pray, and God's going to give you a child. Comes to pass, and years rapidly go by. I'm sure that Elisha was in and out of this young man's life. He had seen him on multiple occasions, and probably enjoyed a pretty nice friendship. I can imagine if you're the guy who's responsible for you being part of this world, he was quite happy to see this young man every time he'd come by. But this story that I read finds this young man going out into the fields to follow after his dad. And he gets out in the field, and the Bible says, and he tells his dad that my head hurts. My head hurts. Obviously, this must have been a problem. And there's times when everything goes smoothly. There's times when one day is just like another. And then there's times like this when the day changes and things happen. And almost to the point where it happens in a single day. Today was that day for the house in Shunem, because a young man was picked up, and his father said, look, asked one of those around, look, please take him back to his mother. Take him back to his mother. Verse 8, Elisha came, and it was a joyous time, but yet in verse 17, it was a joyous time. But I would have to tell you that one of the most memorable of all of those days was whenever he was found dead and was raised back to life. You see, it takes more than a moment for the brightest day to become suddenly clouded with disaster. Our days as we live them in our lives, we have good days and we have bad days. We have days in which it seems like God smiles down on us and everything's, birds are chirping, everything's going good, and then you have those days it seems as if nothing goes right. On this day there came a cry in the middle of the day from the field. Life was progressing, but yet suddenly there seems that some problem has struck, and somehow a young man has left the house in the morning full of life and comes back, and now he's sick. He's sitting in his mother's lap, and he has this complaint, just simply, my head hurts. And the Bible tells us that her only child died in verse 21, and says that even after the child died, that her response was almost unfathomable in the moment of grief. But even in the midst of this, and I don't know about you, but I would not want to be in the position of the Shunammite woman. If anyone in here has lost a child, I can assure you that my heart goes out to you. I have friends who have lost children, and it's just not normal, and it's not the way it's supposed to be to bury our kids before us. However, in this case, we see the great emotion and the great sadness, but yet here, this woman, in the midst of this trouble, in the midst of this kind of a problem, she shows just how great she was. This is where we define her greatness. She was great in her ability to handle life's problems. I don't know about you, but my mom struggled somewhat in this thing. My mom had issues with pills, and she had issues with life becoming too much to handle. But I can tell you that there are some folks that I know that it seems life never affects them. I've known people in my own life where if I was to ask them, how you doing? They always say, well, I'm doing good. They could have a leg falling off, and their arms broke, and, their car's upside down, they hanging from a tree. How you doing? We doing pretty good. Shake your head and go, what in the world are you doing? I can see you're not doing good, but This lady here, if you take and look and find a fellow who has walked across the Sahara Desert, when you find him, I guarantee you, you're going to find blisters on his feet. If you find someone who's carrying a burden in life, and whether it be grief or just something going on, you find that their shoulders are a little bent under the load. It's normal. It's the way things are. If you take a look at a real sailor, I'm talking about somebody who works out on the shrimp boats or somebody who works out on a fish boat somewhere, by What's Deadliest Catch, any of that kind of stuff, you can tell those folks are fishermen because of the way their face looks. I mean, the weather just beats on them and beats on them and beats on them. And you can tell that they've weathered a few storms. And there is no Garden of Eden here anymore. Whenever sin entered into this world, Garden of Eden disappeared. There's no gardens where we can go to and everything's just perfect. There's no life that I can point to and say everything's going to be just right. I can even tell you that I believe everything's going to work out for your good, but there's no promises. Can't make promises we can't keep. Every garden of comfort soon finds trouble. Every life eventually has a little rainfall in it. Every one of us, if you think that we can live our lives trying to stay away from trouble, that's not the case. Trouble seems to find its way into our lives no matter what we do. This morning, being Mother's Day, I thought I'd spend a little time talking about what moms are most important doing. I would tell you today, and for those of you who had children, that Satan is trying his best to steal our kids away. Now, we live in a society that's corrupt. If you have any insight at all, if you have any kind of understanding of what this world is like, we live in a messed up world. It doesn't take you living very long to see the changes and the differences that occur. If you've been around a while, Sister Doss, you've been around a little while, and I can assure you've probably seen a few changes. So I think if James come to office, make some comment. What was that he was commenting about? Made some comment about, I don't even remember now, but some kind of technological thing. I had to look at it and say, when I was born, oh, that's what it was. I was looking at my birth certificate. And he was talking about my birth certificate. He probably said, well, they probably printed that from a computer. I said, I was born in 67, man. They didn't have computers in 67. I remember whenever you didn't even have a cell phone. You just had to work with the rotary dial phone on the wall. Pay phones were everywhere. Things change, and our society is becoming more and more and more corrupt and decadent. As we become more familiar with history, we see the cycle that's occurring. We see the United States going the same way as the Roman Empire. And it's one of those things that when we see our generation more vile than the previous generation, it's because a lot of times that we have more access to news. Today, when you leave here, you can punch on your phone and you can see all the bad stuff that's happened while you've been sitting in church this morning. You can see who's been killed. You can see where the riots are. You can see what countries have been lost. Whatever it is, you can find it. And as we become more familiar with the access that the news agencies have done, we also have found ourselves falling trap and prey to those news agencies. And all of a sudden, you and I are living in a world that the devil seems like he's got everything going the way that he wants it to go. And a lot of that's because of the fact that we have made changes in the way that we have mothered our children. You see, we turn them loose in front of the TVs instead of making them go outside. We work 2 jobs, and I get it. We work 3 jobs, maybe 4 jobs. Why? Because it costs so much to live, and it costs so much to raise a family. And sometimes we let we let the outside world influence. I was raised with a babysitter. I had a nanny. She was, Miss Frida she was huge. Big black woman. I think she had like 18 kids. And then you added us three on top of it. She'd pick us up from school, we'd go to her house sometimes. Sometimes she'd be at our house. She cooked for us. Miss Frida was a sweetheart. She was so big when she died that her casket took, I think, 10 men to carry. It was the size of a baby grand piano. Miss Frida was a sweetheart. But my mom did that because she was working at the school. She was a home ec teacher, right? But the thing that I appreciate about Mom was whenever the last of us three kids went into kindergarten, she quit her job. Because she felt like when the kids come home, that they needed to see Mom at home. Mom would cook the meal. On Sunday, we sat around a table and actually talked and didn't text. We had conversation. It was one of those things that has gone away in society today. If we're not careful, we're going to find ourselves a long way from where God wants us. An ounce of mother is worth a pound of preacher. I get your kids for a couple hours a week, maybe. We get our Sunday school for just a few minutes on Sunday morning. Our influence is very small. You know where influence comes from? Family. Mamas, daddies, having taken part in their kids' life. I get it. My dad worked himself. He worked a job at DuPont, retired from DuPont. We never seen him. He was working overtime every chance he got. Made good money. Somehow we have to remember that there's been a lot of mothers who by unfaltering work have reared children, taught them manners, gave them a love for learning, taught them a reverence for God, and set them down a path. An ounce of mother is worth a pound of preacher. I love the fact I can get in the pulpit and I can preach to you out of this book. I think that's a great thing. But the real truth of the matter is I'm just trying to set you up so that you can take it home and raise a family with it. And do it according to the book. An ounce of mother is worth a pound of preachers. Think about the stuff going on today. Lord, you've got legislation that's taking prayer out of schools. You've got a society that's now driven by the fringes of society. Just a 10 or 12% of the world is driving what happens because the rest of us are staying silent. If you take a look at your schools, they're starting to teach things that, when I was in school, we would have laughed at. How about religious discrimination? Things of that nature. We're looking at on PBS. Now you've got, this is what the internal memo said about evolution. Its goal was to preach Darwinian evolution in a manner that would reach millions of students, parents, teachers, scientists, religious leaders, community groups, and government leaders in an accessible, compelling way. Well, that sounds really good, don't it? Anybody ever watched PBS, watched evolution on PBS? Anybody ever watch some of the stuff there and you go, man, that's great cinematography. Man, look at the picture on that on my 72-inch curved Sony. Man, that's a gorgeous picture. Man, that is fantastic. Never one time realizing what you're watching and what your kids are watching are teaching them things that are not here. Anybody in here believe you come from a monkey? Really? If that was the case, at some zoo somewhere today, there's a monkey turning human. If it was true. Think about our music. I'm not even going to get into respect for authority. But have you actually realized how bad just cartoons have gotten? Do you realize that now Disney is promoting the fact that you can have two female cartoon characters kiss one another? Or a male cartoon characters. Oh, don't worry, it's just a cartoon character, my child. It's just a cartoon character. Don't be stupid. They're teaching our kids. Where's moms? How about this? Failing students are being taught by instructors who can barely write in English. Think about the kids we have getting out of school. They're going to sooner or later be teachers, right? Can you imagine someone who went through Common Core math, trying to teach? Have you seen that your kids today don't know how to write because see, my mom, when I grew up, my mom bought a set of, what were they called? Childcraft? Is that what they were? You know, the encyclopedias? Well, they had the kids' version. I think it was called Childcraft. She bought a set of those. I read every one of them. I read most encyclopedias. I've read more books than I can count. Why? Because she instilled in me a desire to learn and to read. I can write. I can carry on a conversation. I can even write a letter. I don't have to type it out. Yet despite all of this stuff, all the calamity, all the problems, all the decadence that this world has to offer, I still am convinced that one praying mom can overcome every single thing that Satan can throw against us. Just one. I believe that a praying mom who's trying her best to get it taught to her kids can have an impact on her life. I'm going to read this to you. I read this years ago. I probably got it filed away somewhere, but I found it this morning. I looked it up. We had the meanest mother in the whole world. While other kids ate candy for breakfast, we had to have cereal, eggs, and toast. When others had a Pepsi and a Twinkie for lunch, we had to eat sandwiches. And you can guess our mother fixed us a dinner that was different from other kids, too. Mother insisted on knowing where we were at all times. You'd think we were convicts in a prison. She had to know who our friends were and what we were doing with them. She insisted that if we said we would be gone for an hour, we would be gone for an hour or less. We were ashamed to admit it, but she had the nerve to break the child labor laws by making us work. We had to wash the dishes, make the beds, learn to cook, vacuum the floor, do the laundry, and all sorts of other cruel jobs. I think she would lie awake at night thinking of more things for us to do. Side note here, my mom made a list. I'm just going to bare my soul here this morning. I hate it. I come home and my mom would have a list for every kid sitting out on the bar. And it was things we had to do. Mine would consist of empty the dishwasher, straighten the pots cabinet, clean off the bar and countertops, wipe them down, clean off the table, wipe the table, mop the kitchen floor. Yes, I can clean better than any women in here. Put on the clothes to wash, your jeans. Take the clothes out of the dryer, hang and fold your clothes. Clean your room. Then it would say, good. Bring in firewood. Feed the dogs. And that's only about half of it. It would take a whole 8.5 by 11 sheet of notebook paper. I hated those lists. She always insisted on us telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. By the time we were teenagers, she could read our minds. Then life got really tough. Mother wouldn't let her friends just honk the horn when they drove up. They had to come up to the door so she could meet them. When everybody else could date when they were 12 or 13, we had to wait until we were 16. Do I need to read that one more time for anybody? Because of our mother, we missed out on lots of things other kids experienced. None of us had ever been caught shoplifting, vandalizing, trespassing, or even arrested for a crime. It was all her fault. We never got drunk, took up smoking, stayed out all night, or a million other things other kids did. Sundays were reserved for church, and we never missed once. We knew better than to ask to spend the night with a friend on Saturdays. Now that we have left home, we are all God-fearing, educated, honest adults. We're doing our best to be mean parents, just like Mom was. I think that's what's wrong with the world today. It just doesn't have enough mean moms anymore. Doesn't that sound about right? See, now back to Shunem. For all was said and done, the child had an old prophet come in and breathe life back into his lifeless body. That's why every child needs a prophet, a pastor, a preacher, a minister in their life. If your kids do not have a relationship with their pastor, there's something wrong with your parenting. Should I say that one more time because that got quiet? You see, this morning I'm sitting in my office and I had 2 or 3 kids come wandering by and sitting down in the chair. And you want to know something? Sometimes somebody comes by, especially a parent. Hey, get out of there! I would never tell you, but I'd like to slap the snot out of you. Oh, did I say that? I didn't mean to tell you all that. Leave those kids alone. Because when they're afraid to come to you, you want them to be able to go to somebody. And who better to go than the guy that's trying their best to get them to heaven? You like the disciples that said, shush, kids, get away. The good Lord said, look, suffer little children come unto me. You leave them alone. There's something about preachers in kids' life that make a difference. If I didn't have the relationship that I have with my pastor and assistant pastor and some of the other preachers in my life, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. I'd have never survived getting out. I'd never survived getting out of teenage life. But they took the time. Put your pastor in the kid's life. There's some things we can do for our children. Think about this. Start it on your knees. You really love your kids? Anybody in here? Everybody in here that loves your kids, raise your hand. See, look at here. Everybody raise your hand, right? My wife and I love our kid named Gorilla. We loved him enough to give him a haircut. We call him Sleep Willie now. He got no fuzz. He looks like half the dog that he was. We love him. If you love your children, why don't you take the next 30 days and pray for them every day? You see, that'll get away from us if we're not careful because we got lives to live, right? How about if you pray in 2 minutes a day, pray for 5. 10 minutes, pray for 20. I'm just saying there's something you can do. How about establishing your limits? You know the worst thing a parent can do is not have rules. Oh, it's all right. Just let them be kids. Just let them be kids. You need your head examined. You letting the inmates run your side. Have rules. Set some limits. You can't assume that your kid's going to know better. Kids don't know better. Most adults don't know better either. Ought to be some limits. How about evaluate your own life? Oh, let me step on your toes a little bit right here. How can you tell your kids to stop listening to that stupid music whenever you in there listening to your stupid music too? How can you tell your kids, don't watch R-rated movies if you're in there watching R-rated movies? How can you tell your kids, don't go out on Friday night with your friends and get drunk whenever they see you drunk at home? Don't smoke no cigarettes. Those are bad for you. I'm telling you, they're bad for you. If you're trying to get your kids to heaven, are you acting like you're trying to go to heaven? Are you praying in front of them? Or do you just sit down at the table maybe and just go to eat? Did you have some study time, some Bible reading time? Do you kneel down by their bed at night and pray with them? I'm just being honest. Evaluate your own self. We justify ourselves, right? We justify ourselves. Be careful that you don't justify yourself to the point where your kids look at you and go, well, that's the biggest hypocrite I know. Look, I understand. Y'all do know where you find the most hypocrites, right? In church. This is the place where hypocrites come. If you don't believe it, you watch me long enough and I'll do something I shouldn't do, and you can call me a hypocrite. But this is where we come. But we're only hypocrites here because we're trying. If I was out in the world, I wouldn't be a hypocrite. I'd just be like everybody else. Don't let your kids look at you and say, well, that's a hypocrite. Don't preach it one way and live it another. Be consistent. Explain your limits to your kids. Explain what it's for. If you've been praying for the last 30 days and you sit them down and say, look, here's some limits. At least they know you prayed about it. And it wasn't because you was mad. How about challenging your children to think biblically? Why should we let teachers and media and their friends teach them how to think? You need to teach your kids how to think on their own. Not listening to the outside world coming in, not listening to their friends even, because, look, I had friends that were stupid. I had friends that was nuts. Think about what it'd be like growing up with him as your friend. You'd be in trouble all the time. Alan's back here with you. We all got those friends that's constantly, I get a phone call. You know, one of them phone calls that you make you, see, we didn't have cell phone, remember? It'd just make the phone jiggle a little bit. You could pick it up real quick before it rang, you know? I had old Fred Hartchuck. What you doing, Hennigan? Trying to go sleep. I said, hey, we'll go wrap Hickman's house. I said, bro, you know how far Ted lives from here? He said, I got my four-wheeler out the garage. I'm coming your way. Actually, it was three-wheeler. Didn't have four-wheeler back then. I said, Lord, you know it's 2 o'clock in the morning. He said, we won't be gone but an hour or two. So down the road we went. Cold. He got sharp pants on, wearing cowboy boots. Now, I'm fully dressed because it's cold, right? And we ride, you know, like 3 miles to Ted's house. We got 2 rolls of toilet paper. That was a lot of, I tell you. It was all that I could find. It was all he did. So we wrapped Ted's house. Car come down the road. Fred said, run! I said, where? So he's running down the road like he's jogging. You know. Short pants and cowboy boots. Doing a high school t-shirt. We all have them kind of friends. Some are good memories. Maybe some aren't quite so good. But why would I want my children being taught how to think by the world when this is such? I don't know about you, but this is a story that was told by James Dobson by a man named John Courts. He said he was 16 years of age and he and his younger cousins went to visit his grandmother's farm. They couldn't wait to get there and go out into the fields. They wanted to pitch hay and ride on the tractor. It sounded like so much fun. Them poor dummies. My God, I would pitch more hay in my life. There's no fun in it. The reason I don't raise cattle today is because I don't want to handle hay. But the grandfather was reluctant to let him go. They whined and begged until finally he said to John, you're the oldest. You can take the kids to the field if you promise not to bring them back early. You got to keep them out there until the end of the day. Boy, y'all can already see what's going to happen here, huh? John said, I'll do that, Papa. So they all got on the hay wagon and tractor pulled them out to the field. Very quickly, kids got tired. They started complaining. It was hot and sticky. They were miserable. Began asking to go back to the house. John said, no. Grandpa told me to keep you out here. At lunchtime, they were exhausted. Most of them were agitated. It was very hot. The hay was down their backs and it itched. They wanted to go back. But again, John said, nope. Grandpa told me to keep you out here. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, a big black storm cloud come rolling over. The kids got scared. Some were crying, please, let us go home. Still, the answer remained no. At 5 o'clock, John said, all right, it's time to quit. Got them all on the hay wagon and went back to the house. After they had their baths and been given something to eat, they rested for a while. Grandpa praised them warmly for the work they had done. Then they became very proud of themselves. That's when Grandpa told John why he wanted him to stay in the field. He said, this farm has been successful through the years for one reason. We have stayed in the field when we felt like coming back. We did what we needed to be done even when we wanted to quit. And that's why I wanted the kids to have the satisfying experience of staying with something until it was completed. I can tell you, folks, that if for no other reason than teaching our kids to not give up when the going gets tough, we need to make sure that we teach them correctly. The old prophet showed up at the house. I don't know the conversation between the Shunammite woman and Elisha, but this much I know, that their conversation centered something around the fact that my son has died. I can assure you that that statement within itself to anybody would send shards of pain and certainly doubt. You would have to think that those that surrounded this household had already made up their mind there's going to be a funeral in a few days. But yet the prophet walked in. Child regains life. I look at the story and I wonder how Dad felt when the child come to him. Wonder what his intentions were when he said, look, take him back to Mom. You see, I believe he's just like every other dad. It's an unusual dad. It's an unusual dad to change his diapers. Any dads change diapers? 1, 2, 3. There's a few. You ever change a diaper?
What are you going to do, Chad, when you start working?
Poor Sister Tracy. See, my dad never changed a diaper. Now, he was the provider. My dad did. My dad taught me how to work. Taught me how to be a cowboy. Taught me how to hunt, fish. Taught me how to, mow the yard, take care of dogs, saddle a horse, how to change oil in my car, taught me how to rebuild an engine. My dad did all of those daddy things, right? But I can assure you that even today, and my dad's going to turn into an old softy because he figures he's about ready to die at any moment, just an old softy. I still don't hear him say I love you. Every long once in a while, he's really bad. He don't hug. He don't kiss. He just don't. I got a feeling that probably the Shunammite's husband was probably sort of the same way. He was a man who's working out in the fields. And the son comes to him and said, look, I'm sick, my head hurts, I need. And he did like what most dads would do. Go see your mom. If you're feeling bad, hurt, you need somebody to baby, go see mama. Mama baby you. Why? Because that's what moms do. They're protective. And then when you sit, they'll pet you on the head. And then they'll feed you soup. And they'll mother you. Now, I don't necessarily like that. Leave me alone. Don't talk to me. Don't touch me. Don't ask me how I'm feeling. I guess I got some of Dad in me, huh? But this young man, when he went to his dad said this, said, take him to Mom. And I believe there's a good reason and there's good science behind the fact that was the smartest thing he could have done. Because I believe his mama was the one that he needed to go see. You say, well, he went there and he died. Yeah. But Mama had a relationship with the old prophet. And Mama had faith enough to call the old prophet and say, look, my son is dying. I need help. I need you to help. And I believe that when it comes right down to it, you and I are in the same boat. Because see, when you take a look at this book, when you study it just a little bit, the church is referred to several times as mother, as mama. Why? Because that's what the church is here for. What's it? To heal up the brokenhearted and bind up all the wounds and put a little mercure cone. No, my mama put my thigh laid on. Drink a little, take a little pill of Seneca. No. Castor oil. Mama knows best. And then, whenever you lay in bed, you can't move, she'll come in there and put that little cold cloth on your forehead. And you'll get to liking it so much that you'll just hang around. And pretty soon, Mama's taking your temperature, and you take that thermometer out and rub it on your arm, put it back in so you don't have to go to school. And we never did figure out how she knew, but you do know that that's probably got that thermometer up like 117, 120. Ain't no way you can be alive at that kind of temp, Oh, I'm sick! Because there's something about Mom's presence just like the being. Why is the church that way for us? Whenever time we get a chance, shouldn't we run to church? When we have a bobo, or hurt, or even, Lord forbid, somebody has died? You see, I look at it and say, you know what? If it wasn't for the church, I would not be here today. If I hadn't had somebody to call after I was within just a breath and probably about 7 pounds of pressure of killing my dad. If I hadn't had somebody to call, I don't know what I'd done, where I'd be. Whenever my family stopped going to church, and I hadn't had those old saints that were there that patted me on the back, say, "You can make it, Randy. You don't worry about it. God's got all this under control. You just keep doing what you need to do." And when I would want to go home, because my whole life was all fussing and fighting, chairs being thrown, and cussing and fussing, all those other things. If it hadn't been for some of those ladies and families that I went home with after Sunday school, that fed me, and their kids might become my family, where would I be? But too often we'll forget about the fact that God has a plan, and He has a structure. And this structure is very important in our lives. And part of it is we just need to know who we need to go to when we need help. Kind of like Daddy sending that boy back to Mom. Take him back to Mom. And you see, today I would urge you on Mother's Day to remember your mom, sure. But also I would say, remember the church with you. Remember the one who died on the cross and shed His blood for you. And I know this is a day where we celebrate moms and all that good stuff. We're going to do that here in a few minutes, but I would urge you to also not forget the fact that God loved you enough to die on the cross. And He shed His blood for us. And when I have need, I go to Him. I don't go to my wife. When I'm struggling with something, I go to Him first. When I have trouble with my family, I go to Him first. When I have trouble with church folks, I go to Him first. Now y'all, come on. Y'all don't believe y'all. I got trouble with church folks. How could I have trouble with church folks with such beautiful people like Sister Dorothy, Sister Charlene, Sister Sandy? Not you, Brother Lee. I'm moving off this list for time. I'm still working on you, son. But the real truth of the matter is, we should all know who we go to for help. And that's very important in our lives. I'd like to thank Sister Charlene as well for apparently deciding she wants to ride a motorcycle. Y'all saw that on Facebook. Apparently she's going to become a motorcycle secretary. I'm so thankful for that. I thought I got it that she wanted to ride a motorcycle for the time. So I'm sure we'll see. So glad y'all came this morning. We're going to get here in about 3 or 4 minutes. I have a couple of announcements. Let's remember, if you want to donate to the scholarship fund for Billy Andrew, make sure you do it before, like this coming weekend. If you do it Sunday morning, make sure you don't put it in the offering. Make sure you get that to me before church so that I can add it to what we've got. And looking forward to what God's going to do next weekend. But the anniversary of Brother Perry's death was yesterday. Yesterday. So I know that you've seen things on Facebook and what have you, but this week, at some point in time, will you help me a little bit? And just at some random time, just text Sister Perry and Andrew. Kids don't have, obviously, a phone, but just text them and say, look, thinking of you, praying for you this week. It was a hard week. You know, kind of let them know we love them. And I believe that'd be a good thing to do. But please get your funds in for the scholarship program prior to Sunday morning service next week. And we're looking forward to what Lord's going to do there. Secondly, if anybody has a small bookcase that you're going to throw away, get rid of, as long as it's in good shape, doesn't have to be much, something small, I need one here at church, just let you know. If, on the back pew, against the back wall, there's a row of books. Those are books out of my office that y'all are welcome to take. Take them home, keep them, and read them, do whatever you want to do with them. They're just duplicates and stuff that I've already read and no longer need. And, but Sister Amy was talking about a little library here at the church. I thought it was a good idea. Just a sorted library. That way we put it back here in the fellowship hall, and if you want something to read or study or whatever, welcome to them. Just take them, bring them back, add to them, whatever. Just need something to put them on. So if somebody has something like that, it'd be great to try to obtain. And I think that's all of my announcements. Why don't you, somebody go grab their kids and see if they, tell them to ease up on their teaching, their powwow stuff, and make their way out of the teepee into the sanctuary. Yeah, just kind of give them a little nudge there. And then we'll let you get started. I'm thankful today you come to church on Mother's Day. I tell you some stories that I better not. I might give y'all too much ammunition. Dogs might. Sister Hank's already wants to throw me off. He's going on down here, so I'm trying to keep my 11 months good. But my mom was a teacher, right? And she was a home ec teacher. So when I tell you that I can clean better than all you women folks, I am exactly 100% correct in assuming that. I do not want to have to prove that because I hate cleaning now. But my mom taught me to clean. I crochet. Pretty good. I sew. I've sewn my own clothes. I have cut out patterns for Mom since I was just a kid. And somewhere at my house, I have all the Mom's old recipes. And they are priceless to me. And I look back on my life, and I know that different folks have different, upbringings. Mine was a little rough here and there. My parents finally divorced after I was married. In fact, I didn't know they was divorced. I learned about that in the first fight with Mom. And but they fussed. They liked. My mom really did like to fight. She liked to fight. However, she was a mom that taught me a lot of stuff that I was very appreciative of. She also taught me how to play Uno. And my Uno prowess comes all from my mom. And I believe that I am the king of Uno. And are open to all comers that want to try to prove that differently. I have a deputy friend of mine whose wife, Heather, who that I now live in the river. She can't stand up to us. She can't beat me in Uno. Just saying. I also know how to cheat, I'm pretty good at cheating too, so she will never beat me. But my mom taught me a lot of stuff, and I'm very appreciative of that today. You don't know, really don't understand until they're gone. But, if she was here today, I'd have to give her a call and probably get a fight with her over something. But do miss my fights on Mother's Day. And so thankful that you guys are here to celebrate Mother's Day with us. I'm waiting to see if we too taught those kids this morning. They were dressed up like Pocahontas. Yes. Looked like Pocahontas. Oh, looky there. How? How? See, I know it's Pocahontas, but what's the other one? Danielle Boone?
Francis Trapper.
Oh, Francis Trapper? Wow. Everybody turn and look at them because they try to sneak in the back there. I'm so glad. The kids have a good time. Steph, why don't you come and do what you're going to do? And then Sister Sandy, when she's done, starts handing out her stuff, feel free to come up at that point. God bless you. You'll stand on the street corner. You know what that look was for.
All the ladies today, happy Mother's Day. And like I said, we don't have any children, but we have puppy dogs, nieces and nephews, so I'm sure every lady here has is a mother to somebody and some puppies are also kitty cats. I want to wish everybody happy Mother's Day. And I want to read a poem first before we get started. Thank God for mother's love. There is no love like a mother's love, no stronger bond on earth, like the precious bond that comes from God to a mother when she gives birth. A mother's love is forever strong, never changing for all time. And when her children need her most, a mother's love will shine. God bless these special mothers. God bless them everyone for all the tears and heartache and for that special work they've done. When her days on earth are over, a mother's love lives on through many generations with God's blessings on each one. Be thankful for our mothers, for they love with a higher love, from the power God has given and the strength from above. And today I'd like to talk about humans. We found out ladies' luncheon last week that most people use their hands, but they don't. Some way, somehow. We played a game, and the ladies all had a clothespin, and if you were caught talking with your hands, somebody took a clothespin. And for a while it was so quiet, I said, oh, why wrong? What's going on? And I realized they couldn't talk without their hands. And by the end of the luncheon, there was a winner. Somebody had all the well, there's two ladies that had most of the clothespins, and one did win. And then after that, they were free, they had a good time, and because they could talk with their hands. And we can learn so much about a person just by looking at their hands. You can tell what kind of work they do. If they're out in the sun, if they work inside, or if a person works in the gardens, repairs cars, you can even see somebody's aging on their hands. And when I'm talking, I use my hands. I want my hands to reflect the kinds of things that are mentioned in the Bible, such as hands of compassion. These were the hands of God the Good Samaritan had in Luke 10. When he saw the man that was stripped of his clothes and wounded, the Bible says in Luke 10:33, and when he saw him, he had compassion on him. Hands of mercy. Not only did the Good Samaritan have hands of compassion, but he also had hands of mercy. He didn't stop with compassion, he felt, but also showed acts of mercy to the hurt man with his hands. He bound the man's wounds with his hands. He poured oil and wine with his hands. He set him on his beast with his hands, and he also took him to the inn and paid for the man's hotel bills with his hands. In Luke 10:33, it says, but a certain Samaritan, as he journeyed, came where he was, and when he saw him, he had compassion on him. And he went to him, bound up his wounds, pouring in oil and wine, and set him on his own beast, and brought him to an inn, and took care of him. And on the morrow, when he departed, he took out 2 pence, and gave them to the host, and said unto him, take care of him. Whatsoever thou spendest more, when I come again, I will repay thee. Which now these 3 thinkest thou was neighbor unto him that fell among the thieves? And he said, he that showed mercy on him. Then said Jesus unto him, go and do thou likewise. The next one we're talking about hands of hospitality. The people in the church of Ephesus knew what it was like to have this type of hands. Paul makes mention of it in Acts 20:34. Yea, ye yourselves know that these hands have ministered unto my necessities, and to them that were with me. Such as giving people things that they need, if they need blankets or food or something. When we have visitors come to the church, we give them welcome bags. And in 1 Peter 4:9, it says, use hospitality one to another without grudging. We want our hands to be productive. In Proverbs, the woman in Proverbs 31 had this in her hand. She seeketh wool and flax, and worketh willingly with her hands. In Proverbs 31:13. Some of our ladies, as you know, do crochet, blankets, and different things, and they plant gardens and vegetables. And Ecclesiastes 9:10 reminds us, whatsoever thy hand findeth to do, do it with all thy might. Next is hands of prayer. Daniel was one with hands of prayer. He didn't let anything stop him from his commitment to talk to God. After the king declared that no one should make petitions to anyone but to him, Daniel went on, as he always had, where prayer was concerned. Daniel 6:10. Now when Daniel knew that the writing was signed, he went into his house, and his windows being opened in his chamber toward Jerusalem, he knelt upon his knees 3 times a day and prayed, and gave thanks before his God as he did aforetime. And that's what we need to do every day. Take time, no matter what's going on, take time to pray every day. Next, we have hands of strength. Remember the people that were helping Nehemiah rebuild the walls of Jerusalem. Nehemiah 2:18. Then I told them of the hand of my God, which was good upon me, as also the king's words that he had spoken unto me. And they said, let us rise up and build. So they strengthened their hands for his good work. We cannot really have strong hands unless we rely on God. We have to rely on his strength, and whatever strength it is, we need to think about how he keeps us in his hands. He gives us the strength that we need every day to face trials and situations that come our way. Next is hands of love. God is the ultimate example of someone with hands of love. For God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. John 3:16. And we are to manifest love too. A new commandment I give unto you, that ye love one another as I have loved you, that ye also love one another. By this shall all men know that ye are my disciples, if ye love one to another. And that's John 13:34. And most of us do like our hands to be clean, especially this time of what's going on. We always wash our hands, doing hand sanitizer, and we don't like our hands to be dirty or to see somebody else with dirty hands. Overall appearance of uncapped hands just doesn't appeal spiritual hands. It's sad when we think about the least little bit of dirt or sin on our hands. We've broken fellowship with God. In James 4:8, draw nigh to God, and he will draw nigh to you. Cleanse your hands, you sinners, and purify your hearts, you double-minded. I want us today to think about our hands and the fruit we bear from them has a big impact on us and those around us. I hope I can improve my hands' appearance, not physically, but spiritually speaking. Perhaps we need a manicure set for our spiritual hands. Maybe a pair of cuticle scissors to cut out some of those whirling things we don't need. An emery board to file away those rough spots that shouldn't be there. And a pair of nail clippers to cut off the overgrowth of self that we all get. Maybe if we kept our hands manicured spiritually, they talk to others about us in a positive way. And today I just wanted, not just the ladies, but all of us, to encourage you to think about what our hands are saying whenever we are out and about. God bless you. Does all the ladies have a ticket? Because we do have some drawing we can do. All the ladies have a ticket? If you don't have a ticket, raise your hand. Everybody got a ticket? Okay. And we're going to have a prize to give away. And also, after service and over, I do have a little gift for all the ladies. It's a sachet with a nail file, and I figure everybody would appreciate that. So let me go ahead and go out and here you are. They might think it's okay. 7,002. It has a 7,002. Okay, we have a little prize up here you can come get. Everybody up here, you see whatever one you want. But Chad, would you like to do mine? Just one of the bags. They're all different. Six, 9, 9, 9, 9, 9. 6 and a bunch of 9s. That's strange. That's you. All right. Okay, one more.
Everybody gonna pay me the money?
Okay, last one. 7,001. What? I want to say happy Mother's Day to all of our ladies. Have a blessed day.
Amen.
and shake hands with your friends.
And our son.